Some people, Allah cannot guide. Allah knows best. Allah can guide them, but what? He has not guided them. That's what I meant to say. Some people Allah chooses not to guide. Allah musta'an. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Tonight's lesson will be on Lu Lu Wal Marjan فيما اتفق عليه الشيخان بإذن الله تعالى. And of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He guides whom He wills. And Allah clearly mentions in the Quran, if Allah had willed, لَهَدَاكُمْ, He would have guided what? لَهَدَاكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ, He would have guided all of you. But Allah chooses to guide whom He wills, and He chooses to misguide whom He wills. May Allah protect us from that. Chapter number 73, we mentioned with regards to Hajj being mandatory only once in a lifetime. And now we should be moving forward to chapter number 74, which is Babu Safar al-Mar'ati ma'a muhrimin ila hajjin wa ghayrihi. Hadith ibn Umar رضي الله عنهما عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال لا تسافر المرأة ثلاثا إلا مع ذي محرم. حديث أبي سعيد قال أربع سمعتهن من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فعاجمنني وآنقنني ألا تسافر امرأة مسيرة يومين ليس معها زوجها أو ذو محرم ولا تشد الرحال إلا إلى ثلاثة مساجد مسجد الحرام ومسجد الأقصى. حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يحل لامرأة تؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر أن تسافر مسيرة يوم وليلة ليس معها حرمة. حديث ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما أنه سمع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول لا يخلون رجل بامرأة ولا تسافرن امرأة إلا ومعها محرم. فقال رجل فقال يا رسول الله اكتتبت في غزوة كذا وكذا وخرجت امرأتي حاجة قال اذهب فحج مع امرأتك. Chapter 74 says traveling of a woman with her mahram for Hajj and for other reasons. 847 is narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet ﷺ said, a woman should not travel for more than 3 days except with a dhu mahram. Hadith 848 is narrated Abu Sa'id radiyallahu anhu. I heard 4 things from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam which won my admiration and appreciation. They are, no lady should travel without her husband or without a dhu mahram for 2 days' journey. No fasting is permissible on the 2 days of Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. And obviously that's not here in the Arabic, but it's in the English. No prayers may be offered after Asr prayer till the sun sets and after the Fajr prayer till sun rises. Number 4, which is in Arabic, not to travel except for 3 mosques. Al-Masjid al-Haram, my mosque, and Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. Hadith 849 is narrated Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it is not permissible for a woman who believes in Allah on the last day to travel for 1 day and night except with a mahram. Hadith 850 is narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas. I heard the Prophet ﷺ saying, it is not permissible for a man to be alone with a woman, and no lady should travel except with a mahram. Then a man got up and said, O Allah's Messenger, I have been enlisted in the army for such and such ghazwa, and my wife is proceeding for Hajj. Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, go and perform the Hajj with your wife. So this chapter basically is telling us is that for a woman to travel with a mahram going to Hajj or any other place or any other journey, there is something that Allah wants. There's something that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has legislated in this issue, about this issue, regarding this issue. Something that Allah wants, something Allah loves, something Allah hates, something that Allah has sent down. There is a ruling about a woman traveling to make Hajj or any other place besides Hajj, with or without her husband, with or without her mahram. That's what this chapter is about. The correlation or the relation or the connection between this and the chapter of Hajj is crystal clear. And that is, most people, when they go to make Hajj, need to travel. Most people need to travel. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jalla, when He legislates Hajj in the Quran, in one verse He clearly mentions the means of going towards Hajj. Is that there is يَأْتُكَ رِجَالًا, they'll come to you upon their feet, walking. And they will come upon a damir, a beast, an animal. And they will come from every fajin amiq, every deep valley. In other words, most people go to Hajj via distance. So a person can make Hajj without necessarily traveling, but in most cases it's going to include and involve some traveling. So therefore, safar, traveling, and Hajj will oftentimes be connected and inseparable. Oftentimes, most times. So the rulings of traveling, prayer, fasting, mahram, money, the nafaqah, what's halal, etc., etc., etc. Is it safe? Is it dangerous outside? Naam. Are the roads open? Are there hijackers, bandits? Naam. Brigands, etc. on the road? Oftentimes that's going to be directly intertwined with the rulings of tawaf, mabit, arafah, tashriq, etc. Hajj being mandatory because the roads are safe. Hajj not being mandatory because the roads are, you understand the difference? Not like other pillars of Islam, zakat, fasting, salah. You pray in your house if you can't make it to the masjid. It's not safe outside, you pray where you are. It's too cold, it's too this, it's too rainy, you pray where you are. But Hajj, you can't get there unless the road is accessible. A woman can't make Hajj unless such and such, such and such. A man cannot make the Hajj without a beast. Right? The importance of the animal, the riding beast, the camel, the car, the plane, the boat. That thing which is not necessarily holy or sacred is needed to do something which is holy and sacred, which is Hajj. We understand this or not? So Safar and Hajj, they go perfectly together. Understand this? And that's why when we read many Hajj fatwas, you're going to read so many different rulings and discussions about Safar and about shortening the prayers, fasting, mahrams, tickets, etc. So that's what this chapter is about. So first is the hadith of Ibn Umar, then Abu Sa'id, then Abu Hurairah, then Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. And all of these hadiths prove one point, and that is the prohibition for a woman who believes in Allah and in the last day to travel without a male guardian. Whether that male guardian is her husband, or whether that male guardian is her mahram, her Lu mahram, brother, stepson, grandfather, father, uncle, etc. To the list of the mahrams that have been mentioned in the Quran Kareem and Surah An-Nur and in other places. All right. So that's the gist of this entire chapter. Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says regarding this, قال العلماء اختلاف هذه الألفاظ لاختلاف السائلين واختلاف المواطن وليس في النهي عن الثلاثة تصريح بإباحة اليوم والليلة أو البريد. قال البيهقي كأنه صلى الله عليه وسلم سئل عن المرأة تسافر ثلاث بغير محرم فقال لا، وسئل عن سفرها يومين بغير محرم فقال لا، وسئل عن سفرها يوما فقال لا، وكذلك البريد، فأدى كل منهم ما سمعه وما جاء منها مختلفا أو مختلفا عن رواية واحد فسمعه في مواطن فروي تارة هذا فروى كذا تارة هذا وتارة هذا وكله صحيح وليس في هذا كله تحديد لأقل ما يقع عليه اسم السفر ولم يرد صلى الله عليه وسلم تحديد أقل ما يسمى سفرا. No, he says, the scholars say the reason behind these different versions, the reasons behind these different distances and amounts of days and nights, not that the hadiths are contradictory or polemic or problematic or clashing, but because there were different questioners and there were different times and places in which he was asked. Different people asked him about a woman traveling, and maybe one Sahabi, one man asked the Prophet about a woman traveling more than once. Bayhaqi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, as if the Prophet ﷺ was asked about a woman traveling without a mahram for 3 nights, and he said no. And as if the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was asked about a day and a night, and he said no. And as if the Prophet ﷺ was asked about a barid, which is a period or a piece of, it's a measurement, a distance, less than a day and a night. Miles, kilometers, what a barid, right? As if the Prophet was asked about that, and he also said no, not that there's any contradiction. And when the Messenger of Allah ﷺ says a woman cannot travel for 3 days and nights, it does not allow her to travel without a mahram for less than that. But the Prophet ﷺ was asked about 3 days and nights, and he said no. Then he was asked, a woman only needs 1 day journey, and he said, you guys with me or not? You guys not with me? Hadiths state different things. One hadith says what? 3. One hadith states what? And other hadiths may just state nothing. A woman can't travel without a mahram. You understand or not? So therefore, person could understand this doesn't make sense. Which one is it? 3, 2, 1, or travel at all? There's no contradiction. The Prophet ﷺ was asked by several people in several instances. One time he said 3, because he was asked about 3. One time he said a woman cannot travel absolutely without a mahram because he was asked absolutely. You guys get it or not? O Messenger of Allah, can my wife travel without me? And the Prophet ﷺ said what? No. Another time, O Messenger of Allah, my wife is 3 nights journey from Mecca. Can she come? And the Prophet said, no. A woman came to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, we're a day and a night away from your masjid. Can we come to pray in your masjid? The Prophet said, no. You understand or not? You with me? Everybody with me? So that's the groundwork of understanding the chapters, or understanding the chapter. And it doesn't mean that the Prophet ﷺ restricted something less than 3 or 2 or 1. And this is very important to understand because many people don't misunderstand this. And they say, well, this journey is in 3 nights. Airplane gets me there in 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours. I'm no longer traveling a day and a night. I'm no longer traveling 3 nights. I'm no longer traveling 72 hours. Understand? Or a person says, I'm traveling for 5 days and nights. So therefore, that's not 3. You understand or not? This is with regards to different Sahaba. As far as one Sahabi narrating the same ruling, but larger or smaller number, then it is because one time he narrated like this, and another time he narrated like that. Understand? No contradiction there. And it doesn't mean is that this is the limit, the nisab of safar. And that's another issue that we have explained in this book about Kitab Salatul Musafirin, the travelers and their prayers. What is considered traveling in al-Islam? Is it based off of distance, or is it based off of custom and tradition? All of that has been explained years ago. Moving forward. فالحاصل أن كل ما يسمى سفرا تنهى عنه المرأة بغير زوج أو محرم سواء كان 3 أيام أو يومين أو يوما أو بريدا أو غير ذلك لرواية ابن عباس المطلقة وهي آخر روايات مسلم السابقة لا تسافر امرأة إلا مع ذي محرم. هذا يتناول جميع ما يسمى سفرا والله أعلم. He says, in brief, the summary at the end of the day, wrapping up everything, al-hasil, is that anything that is called safar, traveling, a woman is prohibited unless she has her husband or her mahram. 3 days, 3 nights, 2 nights, such and such distance, etc. Now this is very interesting with regards to what the ulama of Islam say about traveling. And in the chapter of prayer, most of the scholars say is that the traveling has mileage, distance. And a small number of ulama say it's based off of the tradition. Here, he doesn't use what? Distance. But he says that which is called safar. But there they use it as distance. This goes to show, in Allahu Alam, is that the view that traveling is not based off of distance is the strongest view. Is that it can't be consistently applied. Here, when it comes to women, there is no distance involved. Anything that's called safar, that's considered safar. And we say the same applies to the salah. Whether you cross a bridge and you're in a different town and it only took 5 minutes, or whether you had to travel for 50 miles. Understand the difference? I leave Philadelphia. I go across the Ben Franklin Bridge. I am now in Camden, New Jersey. I cross the Delaware River. When I want to return back to Philadelphia, I have to pay a toll, easy pass, if that's halal. That's probably riba, right? I have to pay a toll, correct? $5 toll. If I get pulled over by the police officers, the cops, whatever you want to call them, khanazir, whatever word you want to use, they're not going to be the Philadelphia police. They're going to be Camden police. Understand this? I catch a case. I run into a skirmish. I get shot. I shoot somebody. Whatever. I'm going to be in that county, that district. Not what? Everyone understand this? So no doubt, whether you like it or not, I'm traveling. But there lies no doubt, me leaving Philadelphia, 5th Street, Old City, whatever, that's not 50 miles. It took me 5 minutes, if that, to get across the bridge. That's not even 5 miles. But am I not traveling? You understand this? I had a brother contact me once from Chicago. He said, in Allahu Alam, I've never been to Chicago. He said that you could drive in Chicago and it could take you, he said, over 30 minutes driving in one point of Chicago to the next without traffic. And you're not outside of Chicago. Is that safar? Is that not traveling? The mileage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the point is that anything that's considered traveling, you leave your home with the niyyah, the intention of making a journey. The moment you've left your town, the buildings, your border, this side of the bridge, etc., is safar. But here, no, he states is that the safar, just like there, is that it's not based off of day and night, but it's anything which is ism, safar. Moving forward, he says, and this is based off of the narration of Abdullah ibn Abbas, which is absolute. A woman cannot travel unless she has a dhu mahram with her. Moving forward. وأجمعت الأمة على أن المرأة يلزمها حجة الإسلام إذا استطاعت لعموم قوله تعالى ولله على الناس حج البيت وقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم بني الإسلام على 5 الحديث واستطاعتها كاستطاعة الرجل لكن اختلفوا في اشتراط المحرم لها فأبو حنيفة يشترطه لوجوب الحج عليها إلا أن يكون بينها وبين مكة دون 3 مراحل ووافقوا جماعة من أصحاب الحديث وأصحاب الرأي وحكي ذلك أيضا عن الحسن البصري والنخعي وقال عطاء وسعيد بن جبير وابن سيرين ومالك والأوزاعي والشافعي في المشهور عنه لا يشترط المحرم بل يشترط الأمن على نفسها. He says, and the scholars of Islam unanimously agree, no difference of opinion, is that a woman is required to make Hajj as soon as she is able. The moment when she has the istita'ah, she must make Hajj. The generality of Allah's statement, Surah Al-Imran, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ, and for Allah upon all men, is Hajj of the Bayt. And the Prophet ﷺ's general statement, Islam is based upon 5 things. And a woman's istita'ah is no different than a man's istita'ah. A man being capable, being able to make Hajj, he says, it's no different from a woman, a man, same. money, etc., etc., all the same. He says, but the scholars differ on the mahram being a condition of her being able or not. She has a mahram, she doesn't have a mahram. She has the money, she has the health, she can go, everything's there, no debts. Some will say she's mustati'ah. She has the ability to go, she has to go. And others they say, or they may say she can't go without the mahram. And others they say, if she doesn't have the mahram, then what? She's not even, no, she can't go, but she's not what? She's not mustati'ah. Understand the difference? She doesn't even qualify for Hajj being obligatory. And some may say Hajj is obligatory, but she can't go until she can travel with a mahram. It's a difference. Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala even says, Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, in order for Hajj to become mandatory upon the woman, he stipulates that she must have a mahram. So without a mahram, according to Abu Hanifa, Hajj is not mandatory upon the woman. Period. According to Imam Abu Hanifa, she is not required to make Hajj until she has a mahram. That's the first view, and that's the view of Imam Abu Hanifa. And this view was also adopted by many of Ahlul Hadith, Ashab al-Hadith, and Ashab al-Ra'i, different scholars of Iraq, Kufa, who are known as Ahlul Ra'i, the people of thought and opinion and intellect. And this is also narrated from Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah. Also Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. As far as Imam Ata, Imam Sa'id ibn Jubair, Muhammad ibn Sirin, Imam Malik, Imam Auza'i, Imam Shafi'i fil mashhuri anhu. Imam Shafi'i had more than one view. The most popular view is that a mahram is not a condition for Hajj being mandatory upon her. The mahram is not a shart. It's not a prerequisite. And the only prerequisite for her to be required to make Hajj is that she's safe. Al-amnu ala nafsiha. She has to have the ability, she has to be certain, or in most cases, she thinks and feels confident that she can go and return in one piece, safe and sound, right? You can go with a mahram and someone could kill you, okay? You can go with 10 male family members and someone could rob you or take your money and rape you. Anything can happen. But she feels confident that the roads are generally to and from what? Safe. Okay? Moving forward. قال أصحابنا يحصل الأمن بزوج أو محرم أو نسوة ثقات ولا يلزمها الحج عندنا إلا بأحد هذه الأشياء فلو وجدت امرأة واحدة ثقة لم يلزمها لكن يجوز لها الحج معها هذا هو الصحيح. She says, or Noe says, listen carefully now, the ring is tighter, it's getting finer and finer, smaller now. Listen carefully. Noe states, Ashabuna, our proprietors, our proponents, our Shafi'i disciples, our comrades, they say is that a woman is safe. She's safe with regards to traveling towards Hajj with one of three things: husband, mahram, or a group of trustworthy women. One of those three things. When a woman has one of those three things, and this is the view of Abu Hanifa, right? No. Not Imam Shafi'i. Thank you. Not Imam Shafi'i, the Shafi'is, the disciples after him. They say is that a woman becomes safe with one of three things: husband, mahram, uncle, brother, stepson, son, etc., or niswatu thiqat, trustworthy women. 3 women, 4 women that are good, righteous, strong women with their heads on their shoulders. Qawi and Amin, right? Strong and trustworthy. He says, and ولا يلزمها الحج عندنا إلا بأحد هذه الأشياء. She is not required to make Hajj unless she has one of these 3 things. Moving forward, they also say, if there was a woman and she only found one trustworthy woman, her girlfriend, to go with her, she is not required to make Hajj, but it's lawful for her to make Hajj. Her and her girlfriend could go and make Hajj, but she's not what? Required. unless there is a group of women, mahram or a husband. Moving forward, هذا هو صحيح. No, he says, and this is what's correct. He says this is what's correct. This is his view that this is what's correct in the Shafi'i way and in general or either of the two. وقال بعض أصحابنا يلزمها بوجود نسوة أو امرأة واحدة وقد يكثر الأمن ولا تحتاج إلى أحد بل تسير وحدها في جملة القافلة وتكون آمنة والمشهور من نصوص الشافعي وجماهير أصحابه هو الأول. Other Shafi'i jurists state she's required to make Hajj even if she finds one woman, one girlfriend, then she has to go. Not a choice, but she must go. And they also say is that a woman could be safe without nobody. She could travel in a caravan and she's amina, safe and sound. No, he says the most famous view, the most popular view in the Shafi'i school is what we previously stated. That's the orthodox view of the Shafi'i school of thought. واختلف أصحابنا في خروجها لحج التطوع وسفر الزيارة والتجارة ونحو ذلك من الأسفار التي ليست واجبة. فقالت بعضهم يجوز لها الخروج فيها مع نسوة ثقات كحجة الإسلام وقال الجمهور لا يجوز إلا مع زوج أو محرم وهذا هو الصحيح من الأحاديث الصحيحة. Then he says, furthermore, next issue, next fiqh branch, subsidiary issue, our ashab, the Shafi'is, they also say, or they differ on a woman making voluntary Hajj with a mahram or without a mahram, or a woman visiting a place that's from the sunnah to visit, or a woman going out to buy and sell, to hustle, to trade. She's going to sell her product or to buy or whatever the case may be. And anything else, any other trip which is not wajibah. Some of them say that she can travel with a group of women as well. And others, he says, most of them say is that she can't travel unless there's a zawj or unless there's a mahram. And this is the correct view based off of the authentic ahadith. Now before we move forward, if these scholars differed on this issue back then, imagine how they would differ on the issue now. And the main wisdom that they brought up, we can say the main wisdom of the Prophet, what they brought up was what? Safety. So if it was an issue of a woman traveling in the desert or across a sea, an ocean, by herself with a group, then what would they say today about cameras, security, police, cell phones, 911? And I'm not saying under any circumstance that just because you have 911 and police that things don't happen. That's not what I'm saying. Everyone understand this? Cops, what did he say? They only come until what? After the crime has been committed. That's the mindset of the vigilante, right? The creed of the vigilante. Police don't come until what? After you got stabbed or shot. That's a fact in most cases. But the concept of if they considered it possible for a woman to be safe back hundreds of years ago, then of course common sense is going to require someone to say that she could be even safer. What? You got it or not? And of course things can always happen, but you get the point I'm trying to make. And no one can deny the fact that things now are a bit different. Anything can happen to you. Crime still happens, but there are cameras. You have a cell phone. Okay, the ease of weapons, self-defense, mace, so many different things, right? Which can allow a person to have more safety than back then, right? Different liability. Even in the age of Uber and Lyft, it's still different. Back in the day, you catch a cab. Who you getting in a cab with, right? A car service versus Uber showing you who's coming to pick you up, how many trips they have completed, the nature of the car. It's a gray Nissan Altima. Now, tell you, versus you call someone and the car is totally different. The murderer or the rapist, he intercepted the call and came in a different way. Wait a second. Oh, this car is green. He rolls down the window. Are you such and such, Davis? Yeah, 1 second. And then they check. They said it was a gray Altima. This one is green. Something's off. Okay? So that's just food for thought. All right? And that's very important food for thought. Now, and before we move forward, this also goes to show, once again, the lie that has been sold and is sold is that studying the madhab is just a simple piece of cake. And that there's no difference of opinion, nothing is confusing, you don't have to think, everything's laid out for you. As far as reading the hadiths, studying the hadiths, taking the hadiths, you'll get confused, you'll be misled, you won't know which opinion to take. There's so many different hadiths. The hadiths are weak, sahih, it's no way you can, you can't just say Quran and Sunnah. But the madhab gives you system. The madhab gives you safety. The madhab gives you clarity. Well, this is what? All these different fiqh details and branches, these are all within what? Let alone outside the madhabs. Was it easy and simple? If I ask you guys right now, I'll be able to repeat everything, step by step. You get what I'm trying to say? So that we said that that's a cheap lie that has been sold, unfortunately. There are many people you'll be shocked. To this day, they'll still propagate that. All right? And that's shameless. That's inaccurate. Rather, there are levels of knowledge in all fields. There's a beginner's level in hadith and there's a beginner's level in fiqh. There's an advanced level in fiqh and wahakada. You can become confused and misled in anything you read improperly. Are we understand this or not? Khair, inshallah. Moving forward. وقد قال القاضي واتفق العلماء على أنه ليس لها أن تخرج في غير الحج والعمرة إلا مع ذي محرم إلا الهجرة من دار الحرب فاتفقوا على أن عليها أن تهاجر منها إلى دار الإسلام وإن لم يكن معها محرم والفرق بينهما أن إقامتها في دار الكفر حرام إذا لم تستطع إظهار الدين وتخشى على دينها ونفسها وليس كذلك التأخر عن الحج فإنهم اختلفوا في الحج هل هو على الفور أم على التراخي. قال القاضي عياض قال الباجي هذا عندي الشاب أما الكبيرة غير المشتهى فتسافر كيف شاءت في كل الأسفار بلا زوج ولا محرم وهذا الذي قاله الباجي لا يوافق عليه لأن المرأة مذنة الطمع فيها ومذنة الشهوة ولو كانت كبيرة وقد قالوا لكل ساقطة لاقطة ويجتمع في الأسفار من سفهاء الناس وسقطهم من لا يرتفع عن الفاحشة بالعجوز وغيرها لغلبة شهوته وقلة دينه ومروءته وخيانته ونحو ذلك والله أعلم. No, he then says, Qadi Iyad states, and obviously Qadi Iyad was a predecessor to Nawawi and the commentary on Sahih Muslim. So Nawawi is heavily indebted to Qadi Iyad, quotes from him abundantly. And also, very interesting is that Qadi Iyad is Maliki. All right? So he says, Qadi Iyad, he says, the ulama agree, is that she is not to go out and leave outside of Hajj and Umrah unless she has a dhu mahram, except for making hijrah from the lands of what? Dar al-Harb, the lands of Harb, right? The lands of, what is the definition of Dar al-Harb? Lands of war? Is that what that means? Lands of the enemy, is that what that means? Is that accurate? What's Dar al-Harb? There's a specific definition of Dar al-Harb that the ulama mentioned. Hostile lands. Tayyib, anybody else? Some scholars say that Dar al-Harb is any country that does not have a peace alliance and a peace agreement with the Islamic State. They said that any country that doesn't have an agreement for a year, for 6 months, not to fight, enter, exit, etc., then that country that doesn't have that agreement is what? This isn't a far-fetched concept. Look now at what's going on in the world today. NATO country? You're on your own, right or wrong. You're not in this alliance, so therefore, we're not required to come to your aid and assistance. We'll make sanctions, we'll cut them off, we'll say we won't buy nothing from you, etc., but we can't physically, or we won't physically do anything yet. You understand this? Because you're, what? In reality, wahakadha. You get the idea? All right? Or similar than that. You get stuck on the side of the road, you call AAA. The first thing they're going to ask you is what? How cold is it? Do you have babies in the car? Nam, are you upset? Are you scared? Are you crying? Are you safe? Is it really dark and scary? Is there somebody creepy behind you? They don't care about none of that. They're going to ask you what? Are you a member? Or do you have an alliance with us to pay and we protect? You do? Your location? What's the problem? We'll send them out to you ASAP. He'll text you. Robert Fulan is on his way 25 minutes away. He calls you 15 minutes later, earlier than expected. Where you at? I'm coming. What are you driving? What's the color of your car? That's a fact. You don't have AAA, then what? Different story. Whether they come, what you pay, etc. So some scholars say that Darul Harb is that which, of course, it isn't Darul Islam, and it doesn't have what? An alliance, a valid alliance as well. It can't be an alliance that's totally against Islam, abolishing things. Something that's valid, a valid agreement that we can make and have, right? Right, moving forward. Sound is good? Maybe my sound, man, took a break tonight. Make sure it's all the way up, the volume.
Okay, now it's all the way up.
Tayyib, may Allah bless you all. Ameen. Moving forward. He states, except for hijrah from Darul Harb, whereas they agree as that a woman can make hijrah and go to Darul Islam, even if she doesn't have a mahram. And the difference between the two is that her residing in the lands of kufr is haram. If she cannot practice her religion properly and manifest her deen, if she's afraid upon her deen and upon herself, then hijrah is mandatory. From one thing we learn 10,000 things. Speaking on Hajj, speaking on traveling, and also speaking on hijrah. And the ahkam of hijrah. The fiqh is all what? Intertwined. Everyone understand this or not? Moving forward, he says, as far as Hajj, and that's a bit different. Whereas the scholars differ on do you have to make Hajj immediately or can you delay it? That's another issue. When you have the money, you have the ability to make Hajj, is it mandatory to go now? Or can you say, I'll go in 2 years, I'll go in 5 years, etc. Moving forward. Khalid Iyal states, Al-Baji says, all of this is only pertaining to a young woman, not an old woman. Mahram, Niswa, etc. That's only pertaining to what? A young woman. As far as an older woman, ghayrul mushtaha. He says a woman that's not even what? Desired. There's no temptation or appetite for her. Ghayrul mushtaha. He says then she can travel what? All trips. If she's not appealing and attractive, she can travel kull al-asfar. Any trip. Hajj, Umrah, Jihad, Hijrah, what? He said it doesn't matter because nobody wants her. He says with a husband, without a husband, it doesn't matter. No, he rejects this. Listen to this now. This is interesting. Baji's point of view is interesting. No, he throws this out on him. He discards this. He says, La yuwafaqu alayhi. We don't agree with this. Why? Listen carefully. He says, because a woman is madhinnatu taba. A woman is a thing, is a place, is a means, is a direction of desire for the man, period. Old, young, tall, short, light, dark, doesn't matter. Keeping it real. Oh, I'm not attracted to this woman. Oh, she's of such and such. That's not my taste. That's not my style, etc. May be true. But at the end of the day, she's still what? She's still a woman. And you still have that which a man has. It's a reality. Nabi Rahimahullah Ta'ala, he says, a woman will always be the object of a man's desire and lust. وَلَوْ كَانَتْ كَبِيرَةً. Even if she's old and elderly. And then the scholars, they say, لِكُلِّ سَاقِطَةٍ لَاقِطَةٍ. Which you can't even translate 100% in English. Which basically means لِكُلِّ سَاقِطَةٍ لَاقِطَةٍ. Meaning every fallen thing has a hand to pick it up. Basically. That's the wisdom of the ancient right there. لِكُلِّ سَاقِطَةٍ ish لَاقِطَةٍ. Anything that falls on the ground, there's always what? Someone to pick it up. We say one man's trash, Another man's treasure. You get it or not? And that's a fact. No, he then states, he says, and when a woman travels, no doubt there will be fools, sufaha, vile men, creeps, dirtbags, scumbags, low men, men that don't have nobility, men that don't have shyness, men that they don't have respect, whatever word or term you use for them. He says a man, what? Who doesn't what? He isn't making fahisha with the old woman isn't beyond him. It's not above and beyond. You know, some people say, I have limits, right? You understand this or not? A person, he does wrong, but he says, what? Is the limit. I'm not going that far. I haven't gotten there yet. Right? Inshallah. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. A man, he says, what? I haven't gotten there. But there's always going to be what? Someone who says what? No discrimination. Unfortunately. He says here, وَغَيْرِهَا لِغَلَبَةِ شَهْوَتِهِ. He says, and any other woman, if a woman is extremely old or not, because he has so much lust and so little deen, so little chivalry, so much treachery, and things like this. And this is people who say that, oh, well, men and women can mix, and oh, a woman doesn't have to cover like this, and a man can look at this and talk like this, and oh, the scholars are perverted. All they do is think about women and haram and shaitan, and you can't, what you mean you can't have a friend, and these people are Wahhabis. They're not following the traditional scholars. They're mutashaddideen. They're harsh. These fatwas come from Saudi, etc. Read what? Read this. Of Noe of the 7th century. If you blocked out Noe and you just read their speech to someone who thinks like this, the first thing you say is, oh, this is a Wahhabi scholar. It's a fact. It's one of those perverted Arab sheikhs overseas. All they do is think about sex. Everything's haram because of a woman, controlling a woman. She has to cover her face. There's no deen. There's no proof in Quran or Sunnah that she has to cover her face. The proof is that it's Arab culture. I said in the masjid once, I won't mention the masjid. I was eating iftar. And there were brothers sitting around talking with me. One brother was an imam. Learned. Hafiz of Quran. Probably knew more than one qira'ah. And he was talking with some other just, whatever, Arab guy. So they're sitting back and forth. I'm minding my business. I'm eating my food. My talk is after such and such. I'm enjoying my food. I don't want no parts of their conversation. So they're talking. They're trading ideas. So one guy says, yeah, these people today, they say Islamic clothing. There's no such thing as Islamic clothing. There's no such thing. What is Islamic clothing? It's clothing of Arabs. No clothing is Islamic. It doesn't exist, Islamic clothing. And then the Imam, he starts agreeing with them. I'm like, hey, this is some good couscous. I'm praying, making dua, oh Lord, please do not allow them to involve me in this conversation, right? So the Imam, he says, Mom, that's right. Different Arabs, they are Bedouins. They come from the desert. They're nomads. All they do is think about women, controlling women, beating women, blah, 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 blah. Then the ignorant guy goes and says that they're ignorant Bedouin Arabs, is that they cover a woman's face even on the wedding night. And even when they go to consummate the marriage, the woman's face has to be covered. And if she unveils her face to her husband that she's sleeping with, then there's shame and dishonor. They'll kill her and they'll kick her out of the tribe, etc., etc. This was his rationale to prove and to justify women should not cover their hands and faces in America. There's no such thing as Islamic clothing. This long piece of garb that you wear is extreme, it's excessive, it's Wahhabi, etc., etc., etc. And these fatwas come from chauvinistic, misogynistic men who want to just control women, and every evil that exists in the world is because of a woman, right? If you gave him this kalam right here, and you crossed out or you patched out Nobody's name, the first thing they would say is what, Khalid? No doubt about it. Then you say, well, let me take the tape off. Noe, 7th century, Syria, Shafi'i, such and such. He followed this. What would they say? They look stupid. All right? So the point is that the fitna of women being a reality is not from Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. It's not from Saudi Arabia. It's not from Bin Baz or Uthaymin. No, it's from the creator of what? Of the woman. And the men who realize this, who know this, and who keep it real. They're the ones who want to say what needs to be said. As far as men that aren't keeping it real, living in a fantasy world, thinking, living on some far, distant, remote planet, and of course, that's a different story. And of course, I told you the reality of the brother, the Hispanic brother, right? Brother from South America, good friend of mine, he went over to Egypt. Remember, I mentioned the story before. And the guy, he was supposed to be teaching them the basics of Islam, right? Basics of Islam. But every class, he kept talking about Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab and Wahhabis, Wahhabis, Wahhabis. Don't be a Wahhabi, don't be a Wahhabi, don't be a Wahhabi. So then one night, the professor, he went to the dorm. And he saw all of the new converts to Islam sleeping, the brothers in the area and the sisters in the area. And he says, no, what is this, guys? You guys don't have to separate. Everyone can be with each other. Islam is a pure religion. We're all Muslim brothers. We're all friends. It's okay. Don't be a Wahhabi. Don't be an extremist. No problem. Most of the new shahadas were like, oh, nah, alhamdulillah. That's good to hear. But this one brother, my friend, he said, yeah, Sheikh, okay, inshallah, when are you going to come and spend the night with us? So the Sheikh said, no problem. I'll come and spend the night. And when he went to spend the night, he was by himself. So the brother said, Sheikh, where's your wife and daughter? Or daughters? Why haven't you brought them? I want to, drink tea with them and laugh and conversate. And the professor was like, yeah, well, yani, point proven or not, is that if it's okay and if it's extreme not to do it, then I want to see what your wife looks like. Bring her right here. Let her drink tea with me, if it's okay. In other words, you know that it's what? It's not okay. You wouldn't allow it. You have the jealousy for your women, but other women is what? It's all right. That's the point I'm trying to make. All right, so that's dangerous. May Allah protect us from this. What's important is, we'll stop here tonight. And hopefully in the next class, we'll finish this important discussion of women traveling without or with without a mahram for Hajj or other than Hajj. And Allah Azza wa Jal surely knows best.